Joining me now is a legendary East Coast rock and roller, Mr. John Cafferty from John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. John, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. I like the sound of that, though. Legendary. Holy mackerel.
You don't consider yourself a legend?
What's that?
A legend of the shore East Coast scene? Come on.
Well, it's been around a while. We played just about every bar that had electricity back in the old days, so we've had some fun over the years.
And you're going to be a part of this thing. I'm also going to be a part of it. I'm a local musician as well from Jersey. I actually opened up for you guys back in 2011 at the Pony. It was a great time, great night. We were the opening band, so it's great to get to share with you again.
It's a good crowd.
Oh, yeah.
We had so much fun playing down the shore.
And the Big Man's West, that's the real reason you're joining us here today for the celebrating the life of Clarence Clemons. And how about your relationship with Clarence? When was the first time you met him?
Oh, boy, we met all those guys back in 1973. We were just starting out. We started our band in 72 and, playing the clubs and the colleges and stuff. And Gary Gramellini, our guitar player, he's from Boston, and a friend of his called up and said, there's a band playing at this place called Oliver's, which was a little bar right behind Fenway Park, right behind the Green Monster, right? It was kind of a little, divey bar back then. And he said, they sound like, Van Morrison, Bob Dylan, like all the stuff you guys like, So we went up and, there wasn't a very big crowd, and listened to the guys, and they were phenomenal, and especially when Clarence picked up that horn. I mean, it just brought that whole history of like R&B and soul that we all grew up and loved, And we got talking to the guys and get to be, hung out with them whenever they came up around our way. And then when we first started playing down the shore, they would all come and jam with us. So a lot of history there.
Do you remember the first night that Bruce and the boys joined you guys?
First time I think they ever played with us, we weren't playing at the shore. We were playing in New Haven, Connecticut, at a place called Toad's Place, and it's a great bar right on next to the Yale campus. And those guys were playing the Coliseum, and they came over after the show and get up and jam with us. So it was a pretty special night. And then another time, Clarence came by himself, and he just happened to be passing through, because we played Toad's Place a lot, probably as much as we played the shore in later years. And he just showed up one night with his horn. He said, "Hey, can I sit in?" I said, and he get up, and him and Tunes, our sax player, Michael and Tunes, who was in the Eddie and the Cruisers movies, I mean, they just played, Junior Walker songs, King Curtis songs, I mean, every old rock and roll sax instrumental. It was just an unbelievable night.
So your first time at the Big Man's West, do you remember when that was?
First started out down the shore. We played at a place called the Fast Lane, which is right in town in Asbury. And then when Clarence opened his bar, which was, I guess it was a couple of years later, because we played the Fast Lane for a few years. And then when Clarence opened his bar, a lot of the bands went and played over there. And I mean, it was, what a great spot that was, I mean, the musicians that would come in there and end up on the stage, and all these Street guys and all the Jukes, Southside Johnny, we'd be in there playing sometimes, and they'd all be on stage together with us. I mean, it was fabulous. A lot of fun. We come from the same era, so, we all knew a lot of the same old rock and roll songs and old R&B soul songs, so it was sort of easy for us to jam together.
Well, you mentioned Southside. I know you and Gary also did a thing when this first happened, like the first year of it, doing in Virginia. I forget where, the theater. You guys all got together. You, Southside, Bobby Bandiera, Gary, Talent, right? You guys had a good time that night?
Yup, Vinny Mad Dog was there. And, it was that. Well, they were raising money for a youth center down in Norfolk, Virginia, and that's where Gary Bonds is from, and that's where Clarence is from. So, we played down there. We did a couple of shows, and that just a couple of great nights. There was something special. And Nick Clemons was there, and Joe Bonanno, and Mike Tunes and myself are going to be sitting there with Joe Bonanno and the Godtons of Soul. And I think the Red Bank Rockers are going to play, and of course, Nick Clemons' band's going to play, so it's going to be a great night.
Oh, yeah, Nick and the boys, they're great. Joe Bonanno has also been a big influence on me down the shore, so he takes care of me when he's around.
No, there you go.
Oh, yeah, I know all those boys. So, also, are you familiar with Eddie Testa and the Cruisers?
I met Eddie a few times, yeah. Yeah, great musician.
I'm a kid to the scene, so when I meet, guys like that, I'm like, oh, the first time I met Eddie, I said, were you Eddie and the Cruisers, the movie? He said, I think I was, but who knows,
Well, I don't know which came first, but Eddie and the Cruisers was a book that was written by a guy named P.F. Kluge, and they turned it into a screenplay, and a guy named Kenny Vance, who was in Jay and the Americans, became a film music supervisor, and he had heard us play one time at the bitter end, like a few years before that. And when he got the script, he said to his director, I think I know a band that might have some songs that you might be interested in, and they get a sax player and stuff, and with a lot of charisma. So he hooked us up with Marty Davidson, and that's how we got involved with Eddie and the Cruisers.
Now, the movie originally, when it was out in theaters, it didn't do well, and the rise of cable in the '80s, that's really what pushed the movie to stardom.
Well, it's sort of right place, right time, right thing. It was when cable TV was a novelty. Everybody was just getting signed up, so they'd watch, whatever was on like 10 times, and they put the film on cable TV in summer when all the kids were home from school, and it was a rock and roll movie with a '57 Chevy and leather jackets, and it was kind of a throwback to '50s, '60s era, and kids in the '80s got a glimpse at a fictionalized version of what that was like, and they took a liking to it. All of a sudden, a month later, I was on American Bandstand with Dick Clark. It was like number one record, number one video. It was unbelievable.
As a musician, you just play because you enjoy playing. But when something like that happens, how did you react? I mean, how did you go? Life changes, right?
Yeah, life changes somewhat. The opportunities change. I mean, as far as the band, we didn't so. We sort of looked at one another and we said, well, this is the same record we made like a year and a half ago, and it's not any better or any worse than it was then. And we're certainly not any more talented or any less talented than we were then. So, it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with us directly. So, let's just enjoy the ride. And it was the ride took us, all around the planet. So it was a lot of fun. Created a lot of opportunities and a lot of chances to get to see places and meet people, and it was terrific.
John Cafferty from the Beaver Brown Band. If you don't know John, and a lot of the Jersey Shore musicians will be doing a big time tribute to Clarence this Saturday at Martell's at Point Pleasant Tiki Bar. And John, the soundtrack for me, I wasn't too familiar with you guys until. Rocky, I was like, Hearts on Fire. You know John Cafferty, Hearts on Fire. So wait a second, that's John Cafferty? Tell us a little about that and how you got involved with that soundtrack.
The guy who directed Eddie and the Cruisers, he had made a film called Lords of Flatbush before that. And, like Eddie and the Cruisers, he goes around and tries to find, talented, unknown people, to try to get them, in the movie and give them some exposure, and just kind of how he did it, Marty Davidson. And Lords of Flatbush had Henry Winkler and Stallone in it. So Sly was, he was aware of Eddie and the Cruisers, so he sort of liked the story, he liked the fact that he had been, playing in the bars for like, almost 12 years before we had an opportunity to record and get some national exposure, and the fact that it was sort of like an overnight thing for us that was 12 years in the making was sort of reminiscent of, his story in Rocky. And so he liked it, so he called up and he asked if I would sing I was singing the song "Hearts on Fire," so I went down. I sort of, you know, walked into the studio, and you know, he was standing there. He just wanted to hear me sing it, so I, you know, screamed it as loud as I could, and he liked it, and it became sort of like an underground hit. Guys who train, you know, a lot of fighters who train and stuff, like they love that because there's a training montage in that movie that a lot of guys train to.
And there were a lot of heavy hitters, right? James Brown was on that too?
Yeah, James was on that, yep. My friend Jimmy Jameson and Survivor, they had a #1 hit with Burning Heart. Robert Tepper had a hit, No Easy Way Out. So I was in pretty good company.
When you picked up a guitar, started singing, how old were you?
I was about 12, 13. Me and my cousin Stevie Smith. Stevie has a band up here called Steve Smith and Naked Truth, big R&B horn band. And they played with Clarence Clemons for probably, over 10 years, 10, 12 years. You know, when he would come off the road with the E Street Band, you know, Stevie would have a bunch of gigs, and they would, you know, we all would do benefit shows together and stuff. So, you know, I got to know Clarence as much from, you know, him playing with my cousin Smitty's band to, you know, as playing down at the shore.
You guys, as musicians, always playing. I mean, is it hard to keep in touch with, when Clarence is around, when they're always playing? Bruce plays almost every year. Did you guys stay in touch through the years?
Well, like I said, he used to play with my cousin Smitty a lot, and you know, Clarence came up to Rhode Island, and Stevie and I do a benefit concert for kids, Make-A-Wish, and you know, called Rock and Jock, and Clarence came up and played at that with us, and they were doing a show down at Harrah's out on the boardwalk. You know, I was coming in from St. Louis, and I remembered that they were playing down there, so I had to stop over in Philly, so I got a car and went down to the boardwalk, and I got to sit in with those guys, and we all went out to dinner after. I got to sit next to Clarence and just sort of reminisce and just, you know, tell him, you know, how much of an influence he'd been on so many people up around our house and just his playing, and how much happiness he brought to people. And, you know, he was a great guy. I mean, he really understood that music is about giving. Music is a giving thing, and if you do it right and you take your ego out of it, you know, you can really lift people's hearts with it, and that's what he did.
Your first official band was how old? It was the guys that you knew. How long did it take for you to piece together Beaver Brown?
I was in my first band with my cousin Stevie Smith, the guy that I was talking about that played with Clarence, and he was the singer, and I was one of the guitar players, and we had a band called the Nightcrawlers because we thought it sounded English. you know, we used to play like Yardbirds and the Kinks and, you know, Stones and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, then I played in blues bands, you know, for years and years. And then, you know, when I was about, I guess we were like 20, 21, and Stevie started his band, Naked Truth, the horn band, and myself and Kenny Joe Silver, we were going to college together. We were going to high school together. Kenny was the drummer. And we started looking for guys who could play, you know, stuff that sounded like Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels and the Jay Giles Band and Van Morrison. I mean, those were like our influences. That's what we really liked. And you know, I remember, you know, seeing the guys from the Jersey Shore, and they had like those sort of backgrounds as well. So it was one of the reasons that we all got along so well.
Speaking of the Jersey Shore, Southside, how's your relationship with him through the years?
He's a great guy. I mean, I know Johnny for forever. Gary Gramellini, the guitar player in Beaver Brown, his younger brother, Joel Gramellini, played with the Jukes right around the Hearts of Stone. Mm-hmm. When Steve joined the E Street Band, because Steve used to be in the Jukes. So when Steve joined the E Street Band, they were looking for a guitar player, and Johnny called up looking, you know, asking if we knew anybody. And, you know, Gary said, yeah, my brother Joel, he knows how to play that style. So he went down and he got the gig, you know. So we opened for them a ton back in those days. Did a ton of shows with them when Steve was managing them and Obi Jejic was managing them. And then when we did Eddie and the Cruisers, Johnny was like a music consultant. like he was down in Cherry Hill working with the actors and stuff, him and Tunes. I was up in Rhode Island writing songs, and then when we went in to record the album, Southside was there when I sang on the Dark Side, Boardwalk Angel, all that stuff. He was in the studio with us. So, I mean, we've known each other quite a while.
Gary U.S. Bonds, how's the relationship with him through the years, obviously sharing stage with him? Was he one of your influences?
Gary U.S. Bonds was one of everybody's influences. We all come from him. You know, it's like we're on his branch of the tree. You know? Like, I mean, that sound that they had in New Orleans and Quarter to Three and Dear Lady Twist and all that stuff, I mean, that all came from, Gary and guys like him, And, the echo on the vocals and, the sax and the big beat on the drums, I mean, we all come from him. And, him and Tunes knew each other way back when, back in the 60s. They knew each other in upstate New York. And the two of those guys in a room, telling stories, they're just so funny. Gary's he's one of the funniest guys, but, I mean, one of the most talented guys ever and one of the nicest guys ever.
Joining me is John Cafferty from Beaver Brown Band, and we're discussing a show that both of us, well, he's going to be headlining, I'll be somewhere in the mix of it, but at Martell's this Saturday in Point Pleasant in New Jersey. We're celebrating the Big Man's West reunion. I'm 26 years old, John, so I wasn't around back then.
Older than you.
Yeah, so I'm experiencing it all for the first time.
Well, it should be a fun night. It's the kind of music that all the guys play, that all the guys grew up with. I mean, it's very uplifting stuff, and it's like, those guys really know how to do it. And it should be a fun night, really. It should be a celebration in the spirit of Clarence, because, that's what he loved to do. I mean, one of the things that impressed me about Clarence is whenever, we would do a show with my cousin Smitty's band, Steve Smith and Naked Truth. Whenever we did a show with the Clarence was on, he would all gather everybody in the dressing room before we would go out on stage, and, everybody would, bow their heads, and he would say a little prayer, and we'd talk about, what we were going to do and what we had to give to people, and try to share with the crowd. I mean, he really understood the power and the real meaning of what the music is all about.
One of my favorite songs of yours is Tender Years. All the songs you've done, and they're all great, but for whatever reason, when I hear that sax solo, how long did Tunes take to do that?
Look, I had that little piano riff forever, I just would play it, it always reminded me of Be My Baby or something, those chords. And, I just didn't have the words. I had a melody in my head, but I just didn't have the words. I even had, the not the sax solo, but the intro, for the song, the first sax lick. And, one night I was just sitting there, I went out and sat on the back porch of the band house, and I looked over the ocean, and the moon was coming up. And all of a sudden, the song just wrote itself. When the moon hung soft and low, catching stardust in the light. I went, okay. It took me 5 minutes.
Wow. And
from 6 months to 5 minutes.
Now, is that your favorite that as a musician, you want to say that you love them all in every different way, but if there's one song, is that the one?
That's certainly, I got different songs that I like for different reasons, but that song, if you just bring it down to if you played it on the guitar and just sang the song, just the words and played the chords, it's sort of a throwback to the Brill Building and all the songs that were being written in that era for the Drifters and people like that, Benny King, and I was kind of like that. And I remember I sent a tape of it. We recorded it, and I sent a tape of it down to Obi Jejic. She was working with Bruce and with Southside and Steve and those guys. And I got a call one day, at the band house up in Rhode Island, and I said, hello. He goes, "Hey, I heard your tape." I said, "Who's this?" He goes, "It's Bruce." So it was Bruce Springsteen. I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I heard your tape." He goes, "That's the real deal." He goes, "That song, that's the real deal. That's a great song."
Well, we all hope someday to get a call from Bruce Springsteen like yourself.
That was something. So I mean, that was pretty inspirational.
And I since you brought him up, and this will be the last one, obviously, John Cafferty here with us, and we're going to be celebrating the life of Clarence Clemons on Saturday at Martell's Tiki Bar in Point Pleasant. John, as far as Bruce goes, do you think, I've read stuff, and getting that Bruce label, it's not just, that came up with you guys, a lot of guys on the shore. Do you think that helps or hurts people?
I think, for me personally as a musician, not so much like my relationship with the media or the press or any of that, but for me personally as a musician, as a guy who plays the guitar and writes songs for a living and plays in a band, Bruce was always very generous with us, always, gave us a lot of insight, a lot of advice as to, how to go about things. I mean, I always saw that as a very positive thing. It doesn't always translate, to the press. Sometimes, they can be, Bruce covers a lot of ground. He casts a very big shadow because he's so versatile. He's so prolific, and he's so talented in so many different areas. That a lot of people fall under that umbrella. But he's one of the best that ever was, and I feel privileged to know him, and so do all the musicians who do. And there's a reason why people go down to New Jersey and play, because that music, that school of music that we all love. I mean, that's where it gets played. So a lot of East Coast guys, go down to Joey Grishecki from Pittsburgh and John Eddy, and but it's that music is very well accepted and understood down there, and it's like it's a great thing. And but like I said, we're all on Gary U.S. Bonds' tree.
For the band, you guys, you have any shows coming up? How's the band doing?
Oh God, we're all over the place. We just down in Tennessee, then to Vegas, then to Miami. We just did a gig in Connecticut. Tunes and I are coming down, not the band, but Tunes and I are coming down to do the show down at Martell's with Clarence, and then we're playing Mohegan Sun. Then we're in Orlando. Then we're playing a show with Southside up here in Boston in February. Then we're down in Wilkes-Barre, Vail, Colorado, Cabo, Mexico, Greenville, South Carolina, Canada, Italy. Crazy. We can still rock the house. It's a lot of fun, So I mean, we still have a reputation as a pretty, a pretty good live band. So whether or not they play that style of music on the radio anymore, or record companies sign that kind of stuff up, it doesn't really take away from the fact that you can still pick up your guitar and go out and count to 4.
Oh, yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for a couple minutes. Really appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, and thank you again for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
All right, take care, John.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.